He has conducted over 30 workshops on techniques ranging from tongues acupuncture to electroacupuncture, moxibustion, and cupping therapy, addressing conditions from epilepsy to systemic lupus using integrated Eastern and Western approaches. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Webster Lim.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Dr. Michelle Manuel. Thank you. And a pleasant morning to all of you here for today. So while I'm delivering the lecture, feel free to enjoy the morning snacks. Okay? So my topic for today's talk will be integrative therapies for autoimmunity, specifically acupuncture's potential in SLE care. Okay? So my educational objectives are the following. So basically, I'll be elaborating both on the Western aspect as well as on the Eastern aspect for the point of view in SLE. And for those of you who are not familiar, this is the symbol for someone who is suffering from lupus. It's very similar with pancreatic cancer, wherein you have a violet ribbon. This time, they have the butterfly shape because, as you know, lupus presents with a malar rash. And a little trivia, May 10 is considered to be the World Lupus Day. So that's approximately 3 months from now. Okay? And as we all know, SLE, from the term itself, systemic, so it can range from head to toe. Any organs can be affected depending on which your immune response, or should I say immune dysregulation, affects the specific organs. All right? So to begin with, let me start off the bat first with the conventional Western medicine. So we'll just brush through this. This will just be a quick recap, right? So for terminology, we have autoimmunity. So when you say autoimmunity, it means the presence of antibodies or T lymphocytes that react with self-antigens. And it does not necessarily imply that all self-reactivity has pathogenic consequences. They're present approximately in all individuals. However, autoimmune disease represents the end results of the breakdown of one or more of the basic mechanisms in regulating your immune tolerance. Okay? So usually when you say tolerance, it's a failure to react to self-antigens. And autoimmunity is the failure of the tolerance to autoantibody and autoantigens that may lead to tissue damage. And usually, it is preceded by an inciting event. Most of the time, it is generally self-limited, most of the time. However, if can be persistent or more severe, and to begin with, you are predisposed for immune dysregulation, it may result in an ensuing pathology. So, there are mechanisms of autoimmunity. We have what is the body's natural way of preventing autoimmunity. You have sequestration of self-antigens. Then you have tolerance in terms of general and maintenance of tolerance. So you have the central deletion and peripheral energy, as well as the regulatory mechanisms in the body that prevents from you incurring an autoimmune attack on yourself. Okay? And there are similar mechanisms of autoimmunity for all the way from exogenous to endogenous. And we are very familiar, usually, for rheumatic fever, wherein the molecular mimicry, wherein you have reactivity with the M protein of the streptococcus. So that's a very classic example of a molecular mimicry. And then the others, the endogenous system, it depends on which one is altered. So you have the resulting subsequent autoimmune disorder. And again, it causes the autoimmune disorder causes the body to attack its own tissues. And normally, the immune system can distinguish itself from self and not self, and they react through foreign substances called antigens. So these antigens can be contained in bacteria, viruses, and other microorganisms. And sometimes when the immune system malfunctions, you then produce abnormal antibodies. We call them autoantibodies. And they will target or attack particular cells of the body, manifesting as an autoimmune reaction. And again, for this topic, we can see a lot of examples of autoantibody and T cells, but for SLE per se, it is a immune complex formation, specifically targeting the double-stranded DNA, hence manifesting with SLE. So these are all just recap, okay? And for the major criteria for you to say you have an autoimmune disease, number one, you have the presence of autoantibodies. Number two, document of relevant autoantibody or lymphocytic infiltrate in the pathologic lesion. And number three, you have to demonstrate tissue pathology. Then the others would be classified as supportive evidence, but more often than not, I just want to remind you the major criteria is the presence of autoantibodies or cellular reactivity to self. And autoimmune spectrum is a lot. So we have organ-specific ranging from Graves' disease to type 1 diabetes mellitus to acute rheumatic fever, all the way to organ non-specific systemic such as SLE, rheumatoid arthritis, antiphospholipid syndrome, and the likes. Okay? So for SLE, disease proper, just a definition, it is a multi-system autoimmune disease from the word itself, systemic. And it mostly affects women of childbearing years. It has a wide spectrum of clinical presentations and diagnosed by combination of features as well as autoantibodies. And they have no classic pattern of disease presentation, so it depends on which organ system is affected. Again, SLE is a chronic inflammatory multi-system autoimmune disease that can affect any part of the body, so to say. And usually, you can see ANA or anti-nuclear antibodies as a prominent feature of the disease. And the disease is on a pattern of remission and relapses. And sad to say, around 90% of which are female. Mostly peak age of onset is between 20 to 30 years of age. So in a pictorial view, you have an inciting event. It has genetic predisposition and UV damage, then triggering the preclinical phase wherein your autoantibodies will be generated from general to specific, progressing to the clinical phase wherein you have involvement of the first organs, then additional organs, and last but not the least will be the comorbidities of infections, atherosclerosis, and malignancies. So SLE, as you can see, it has a lot of genetic component that can trigger an abnormal immune response. And once abnormal immune response is triggered, you have autoantibodies, immune complexes that can deposit in different parts of the body, hence inducing damage. So, for example, if deposited in the kidney, it can have lupus nephritis, and the others is pulmonary fibrosis if it's in the lungs. And I want to elucidate here, so this is lifted from the textbook. The manifestation, mostly 95% of the time, systemic in terms of fatigue, malaise, fever, anorexia, and weight loss, followed by musculoskeletal, which also is very prevalent, specifically ranking number one will be your arthralgias and myalgias. So usually for us in our clinic, that's what we handle, the pain management syndrome. And for cutaneous manifestations, they have photosensitivity and the rashes. And then for hematologic, it can range from anemia to leukopenia, all the way to splenomegaly. And neurologic manifestations as well, it is well documented with certain prevalence. It can also affect cardiopulmonary and the renal system, and the GI, the thrombosis, and the ocular system as well. But We all know SLE is the lupus rash. Everyone is quite familiar with this. If you still remember your butterfly rash or the mela rash, then the other one would be the discoid rashes, disc shaped like a disc. And then the discoid rash is anywhere from the cheeks to the face, to the nose, to the ears, and even to the back. And here on the lower pictures, as you can see, these are video dermoscopic findings of these rashes histopathologically. Then we have the so-called SLE rashes on the back, even on the hands. And sometimes we do see cases of the new term, we call it rupus. Instead of lupus, we call it rupus. It's a Hyakut arthropathy. So this one it mimics your rheumatoid arthritis. But when you check for them for antibodies and workups, you can see a lot of system manifestations. So just a quick recap of SLE, basically what we talk about. So usually they're very photosensitive and they have a lot of manifestations ranging from non-specific to specific manifestations. Okay? And for the diagnostic workups, actually lab tests may provide diagnostically useful information when it is suspected. So your CBC count, your ESR and CRP, that tells you that there is an ongoing inflammation in the body. Urinalysis, 24-hour urine collection, and serum complement level C3, C4 will also be helpful. And for autoantibody testing, we have several, but the ones that we want to focus on would be the ANA, because ANA is the best screening test for a quick review. And the most specific test will be the anti-double-stranded DNA, right? So the other antibodies, they're prevalent as well, but not so important. And diagnostic management, usually, it depends. If you have arthritis, you order x-rays. If you have assessment of possible lupus nephritis, you check for renal ultrasound, chest radiography, and even echocardiography. And the others are also supportive based on the symptoms. So if you have abdominal pain and suspected pancreatitis, you do CT scan, MRI for focal neurologic deficits, and contrast angiography if you're suspecting vessel involvement and heart involvement. And classification criteria, we have the old school of ACR, the American College of Rheumatology. Although this is already FASEI, it has criterions of neurologic, hematologic, immunologic disorder, as well as ANA. So I will not delve into them one by one because this is just a review. And constitutional symptoms usually present most of the time. 50 to 100% of the time, they have fever, fatigue, and weight loss. And fatigue is the most common complaint, occasionally most debilitating, occurring in 80 to 100% of those with SLE. Myalgia is also very common. That's what we do all the time. And then weight changes, it can be in two ways, bidirectional. So you have weight loss because of decreased appetite, side effect of medications, and even gastrointestinal disease. Weight gain, usually it's associated with salt and water retention because of hypoalbuminemia and increased appetite, as well as the side effects of your steroids or glucocorticoids, okay? And the one most commonly used now is the SLIC criteria in 2012. ACR is already FASEI, so SLICC is for you have the clinical and immunologic manifestation. And for this one, you have to have presence of any 4 criteria. And you have to have at least one of each for clinical manifestations and immunologic manifestations. Okay? So this is for a review on Western medicine. And other mnemonics that sometimes, if you are a visual learner, please remember our famous soap brain MD way back in med school. So this is just a recap of the lupus manifestations. So for those who are fan of mnemonics, okay? So Management for Western medicine, unfortunately, there's no cure. Complete sustained remissions are rare. So usually what you do is the quality of life palliative. So you plan to improve acute flares, then you maintain the improvements. And conservative therapies for SLE, it's warranted when there's no major organ involvement. So you manage basically on suppression of symptoms. Analgesics and antimalarials are the mainstays, specifically for antimalarials for reducing dermatitis, arthritis, and fatigue. And you minimize precipitants by using sunblock with at least 55 SPF, sun protection factor, and the most difficult, stress avoidance. No? Stress avoidance. And for arthritis, arthralgias, NSAIDs are the ones that are most commonly used, but you have to use them with caution because patients are increased risk for NSAID-induced aseptic meningitis, elevated liver enzymes, hypertension, and renal dysfunction. And all NSAIDs, particularly those that inhibits COX-2, as you may well know, may increase risk for MI or myocardial infarction. Hence, acetaminophen, Tylenol, Biogesic, is preferred to control the pain. And for those with life-threatening SLE, mainstay would be systemic glucocorticoids and even your immunosuppressive agents. So basically, you have to suppress the immune system using steroids. And other things that you have to remember in the Western conventional management, sun protection. Usually avoid exposure to direct or reflected sunlight and other sources of UV light, SPF of at least 55 and above. And smoking cessation, because they found out cigarette smoking increased the risk of developing SLE. Hydroxychloroquine is less effective in smokers. And Western management immunizations prior to institution of immunosuppressive therapies. Then you have to avoid specific medications that can induce SLE, the so-called drug-induced lupus. Oral contraceptives can cause exacerbation of SLE. Pregnancy should be avoided during active disease, especially in the women of reproductive age. And at least 6 months, the disease has to be in remission before they plan to become pregnant. Overall 5-year survival would be in Western management is over 90%. Mortality most of the time would be for organ failure and overwhelming sepsis. However, the patients with lupus have a 5-fold increased mortality resulting from premature cardiovascular disease, to which chronic steroid therapy makes a major contribution. And not to mention, there's a lot of disability for SLE, mainly for chronic fatigue, arthritis and pain, as well as renal disease. So basically, our patients in my clinic come for quality of life care, palliative, and what we address most of the time is pain and disability. Hence, we'll now go to the other side of the stick, which is the TCM SLE in the Eastern or TCM syndrome, right? So for TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, we have certain causes such as congenital deficiency of the prenatal essence, then external contraction of the 6 so-called pathogens, unregulated emotions and eating habits, including drinking alcohol, and overtaxation can also contribute to the manifestations of SLE. And as compared to Western medicine, in TCM, we have so-called pattern differentiation and syndrome differentiation. So basically, what I wanted to show you here, how the different etiology would govern or manifest in terms of lupus. So for example, 6 pathogens, they tend to have an end results of the cold, damp, and damp heat, B syndromes, or the arthralgia syndromes. A weak constitution of the body and emotional disorders can lead to excessive heat or a yin deficiency of the liver and the kidney that can manifest as the erythematous rash. And qi and yang deficiency can manifest as edema. So the importance of this for those of you practicing acupuncture and TCM and the likes, knowing the etiologies, knowing the pathogenic process will influence your selection of points. It will influence your treatment modalities and lifestyle recommendations. And usually in TCM, we say the primary pathology of SLE is a Zhang organ deficiency, and the secondary pathology is an excess. So usually we have the root and the branch, but most of the time they coincide together, and when you treat your patients, you treat holistically, specifically when using medical acupuncture for it. And again, treatment principles, basically in TCM, you have to purge the excess evils for an excess pattern. It's usually used for an acute flare-up. Then for a chronic case, most of the time they will present with a deficiency pattern, so you have to tonify the deficiency. And I just wanted to show you on this slide that SLE is diagnosed in TCM. It can be in the form of toxic heat and blood stasis, wherein you have to clear heat and cool the blood, relieve toxicity and move the blood. Then you can use formulas if you don't like acupuncture needles. But for the acupuncturists here, you can use points such as LI4, bladder 40, LI11. These are points that can reduce heat in the body. For those with wind damp heat, you can do local points and spleen 9, which is very good for reducing dampness. Qi and yin deficiency, it will also influence your points such as LI4, kidney 7, and PC6. So this chart basically summarizes the patterns commonly seen in SLE. And aside from no sunshine or avoidance of sunshine, in TCM, they also advise them to avoid spicy food, seafood, and greasy food. Because the premise here is that these foods can generate internal heat that can exacerbate your symptoms, whether it's an excess heat or a deficiency heat. So, where does our role come? Usually, we do it on the chemotherapeutic side effects during treatment of autoimmune disorders. So as we all know, Western med has a lot of side effects. So you have side effects on the endocrine system, immunodepression, adrenal cortex addiction. Then for immunosuppressive agents, you have effects on the hair, bone, digestive, and even reproductive system. And here on this chart, all the modalities or Western medication in TCM, it has a certain property. It's warm, hot, pungent, dry. And all of these can induce specific signs and symptoms in the patient, which, for example, some can cause heat and toxins in the body. Some can cause dampness. Some can injure the yin deficiency of the Zhangfu organs. Other injure the qi or yang of the body. And some can injure the blood. So basically, these are what we expect when we give the conventional Western management. So the TCM, Eastern management for acupuncture, would be in general to ameliorate these signs and symptoms. And a mainstay, as you all know, you are all familiar with this one, prednisone, corticosteroids. And in the early stage for taking prednisone for the first 10 days around, the treatment basically in TCM would be to the primary differentiation of the syndrome. So whether it's an excess heat or a deficient heat syndrome, whether it has a dampness syndrome, these are the ones that you focus on. On the middle stage, after 10 days, there now becomes the so-called hyperactivity of yang due to yin deficiency becomes evident. So usually it manifests with red face, overeating, thirstiness, red tongue with a less tongue coating and a rapid pulse. So the treatment now for a well-versed acupuncturist will be to nourish the yin and clear the fire. For the acupuncture points, you can select your spleen 6, liver 3, kidney 3, and lung 5 for the middle stage because this is yin deficiency with a hyperactive liver yang. For those of you who are into TCM herbology, there's the so-called Tsuokui one or left restoring pill. No? We have the left restoring pill. So it's basically a formula made of multiple Chinese ingredients manufactured as an over-the-counter drug and sold. So this one is also another way on how to correct the imbalance. So the left restoring pill focuses on the kidney yin. Right restoring pill focuses on the kidney yang. There's no up and down. It's just left and right restoring pill. No up and down, okay? And then for those patients who are steroids but now they're stable and tapering off the dosage, the clinical picture in TCM now manifests as yang deficiency. So here we used to say you use TCM to reduce dependence on the prednisone and reoccurrence. So yang deficiency, as some of the TCM practitioners here know, it manifests with fatigue, spontaneous sweating, poor appetite, obesity, pale tongue with a thick white tongue coating, deep slow pulse, and a cold chilly limbs. So the treatment, again, will now focus on tonifying the spleen and the kidney yang. So if you don't want to use herbs, another alternative is use the points. So what you can puncture this time would be DO4, bladder 23, stomach 36, and REN 6 because they can all tonify, specifically the kidney yang. And a good pill to tonify them in TCM is the so-called kidney chi pills from the Golden Cabinet. So, or the Golden Lux. So these are also very common in Asian countries. So they can be bought in China drugstores and the like. So they have the advantage of self-continuity at home, also under the guidance of a well-experienced TCM doctor. And for those who are into ISD, as we say, immunosuppressive drugs, azathioprine, mycophenolate mofetil, cyclophosphamide, cyclosporine. So there's also a picture to follow. So in the first 10 days of taking the ISD drugs, one has to focus on the digestive system. So the digestive system most of the time is affected during the first 10 days of the immunosuppressive drugs. And the focus here would be to tonify the spleen and stomach, regulate the chi of the body. So usually treating patients before the patients have been treated by chemotherapy for a week. So ideally, if you can start before chemotherapy a week before, that is the most ideal. Acupuncture points that you can utilize on this stage would be PC6, stomach 36, spleen 6, and REN 12. After your first 10 days, you now have, after 1 month around, this time you have to focus on the hematopoietic system or the blood system because liver and kidney essence deficiency becomes very evident. So here they would start to have loss of hair, lower WBC, fatigue, pale face, insomnia, pale tongue, and a deep, weak pulse. So the treatment here is to focus on the kidney essence and the bone marrow. So you can utilize points such as spleen 6, GB39, kidney 6, and spleen 10. Other formulas, you have the wolfberry, mulberry, or the yellow golden decoction if you don't want acupuncture. So there's always a substitute for it. And by the time you reach 6 months around, you have to focus on the gonads and the reproductive system. Here, the main predominant clinical picture of TCM is kidney yang deficiency, and one has to tonify kidney yin and kidney yang. So acupuncture points, again, mainly focuses on the kidney, DO4, REN4, urinary bladder 23, and kidney 3. Moxibustion is a very good arsenal to have if you are suffering from kidney yang deficiency. So the ones I presented does not only apply to SLE. Any autoimmune disorders that are utilizing steroids and immunosuppressive drugs. So the role of acupuncture there is mainly supportive and complementary. Okay? So I'll go next to the last section of my presentation. I'll present a little bit of evidence-based medicine. So here came an article in July and September of 2014 that was published in the Journals of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine done by Muventan and Nivitia. So this one is a study based on the effect of acupuncture and massage on pain, quality of sleep, and health-related quality of life in patients with an SLE. So the evidences here to begin with, it's a 41-year-old woman diagnosed with SLE with severe pain and swelling of the multiple joints associated with disturbed sleep and poor quality of life. So the acupuncture alone was administered 20 minutes. Massage also 20 minutes for the period of 30 days with 1 week rest period in between after the 15 days. And what they found out is a reduction on the VAS score, visual analog score, improvement in daytime sleepiness and quality of sleep in the Epworth Sleepiness Scale and the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. So the results are actually showing acupuncture and massage can be considered as an integrative approach for symptomatic management of SLE. So the key word here is the symptomatic management of SLE. And usually they just utilize 10 needles per session. For those of you asking what were the points used, I have already taken this chart for your reference. So you can just take a photo of it for the ones that were utilized in this study. Okay, for pain management and sleep quality enhancement. Okay, so you have do 20 on the forehead, do 6, LI11, and heart 7 on the upper extremity, GB34 and kidney 3 acupuncture point on the legs. And what did they do? They just punctured, no stimulation. No stimulation, 1 tune needle only with a 0.38 millimeter diameter. And they do it daily for the first 15 days, daily, Monday to Sunday. Then after which, after completing 15 consecutive daily sessions, rest for 1 week, then continuance of another 15 sessions. So a total of 30. Okay? And outcomes and parameter, what we can see here, 30 sessions of acupuncture and massage to the patient with SLE. They have found out it reduces pain, improvement of quality of sleep, along with improvement in health-related quality of life. And the VAS score for pain showed marked reduction in pain, which indicates acupuncture and massage may be helpful for pain management with SLE. So how does that work? Most of the time in the orthomolecular field, release of endogenous opioids, modulation of the adrenergic system, the 5-hydroxytryptamine system, so on and so forth, that manifests with increased endorphins for pain relief and decreased pro-inflammatory metabolites. Okay? Follow-up, unfortunately, this study is just short duration, so the follow-up was not adequate. So again, more studies are needed. But in conclusion, for this study that was released a decade ago, was that acupuncture and massage have the effect on reducing pain, improving sleep, and health-related quality of life in patients with an SLE. However, more studies are needed, more studies. Next study that was presented that I was able to find and I would like to share would be in 2008 by, by the HHS Public Access by Greco and Cow it's a pilot RCT feasibility and safety study for acupuncture. So usually it's 24 patients that were randomized for acupuncture, minimal needling, and the usual care. So there's 3 groups. You can say there's acupuncture, there's sham acupuncture, and there's usual care. And what they found out is that 40% of patients who receive acupuncture or even sham acupuncture, minimal needling, meaning you needle not at the exact point, you needle far away from the point, there is still an improvement on the standard measures of pain. So it is a very interesting study. However, usual care patients showed no improvement in pain, and they would declare a 10-session course of acupuncture appears feasible and safe for patients with SLE benefits, were similar for acupuncture and minimal needling. So this study, this was just the randomization, whether I just wanted to show you here the inclusion-exclusion criteria of this study. And what they did here was 10 sessions for 5 weeks. So it's 2 times a week with electrical stimulation at the points that I highlighted in the green line. So basically, it's the back, the Huatuo-Tsiatsi points, or the points very near the spinal column or vertebral column. And then they divide that into 2 sets of point selection. And for the minimal needling protocol, they use fake acupuncture points. They punctured at a very superficial, shallow level, non-acupuncture point, and what they found out, there is still pain reduction, despite it not being a true acupuncture point. So this study will tell you that there is logic and science behind even sham acupuncture or minimal needling. And for the usual care protocol, what they did was daily dose of corticosteroids and anti-inflammatory medicine. So they did a study side-by-side comparing the 3. And demographics, you have the age group. So most of them are in the 40s to 50s age group. Most of them are female, white, and there are some African Americans. And then the baseline pain, fatigue, and SLE disease as characterized by certain score measurements such as AIMS 32, AIMS S2, MPI, SF36 that indicates a outcome for pain management. Then there's also fatigue on FSS and SF36 vitality. So it's like a questionnaire that will assess your improvement in the fatigue category. Then there's disease activity and even cytokines. So I wanted to show you here the result of the study. So acupuncture and minimal needling may benefit some patients, especially for pain reduction. And changes for scores for pain and fatigue were in the direction of improvement in both the acupuncture and minimal needling groups. However, for the cytokine activity, usual care and minimal needling changed the scores, but not acupuncture. So they were in the direction of improvement. And 40% of those who received acupuncture and minimal needling improve on their pain scores. Okay? And clinical improvement in fatigue with 13 and 25% of acupuncture and minimal needling groups reporting greater vitality, whereas in the usual care groups, none has met the improvement standards. So the role of acupuncture in lupus would be for quality of life care, palliative and quality of life. Adverse effects, no serious except the minimal pain during needle insertion, dizziness, bruising, and transient bleeding. But most of the time, no serious adverse effect were found, only minor expected side effects of acupuncture. So again, it seems feasible, and what I wanted to tell you here in summary is a brief course of acupuncture appears feasible and safe for patients with lupus. Common side effects such as needling and lightheadedness did not deter participants for continuing the intervention. So it may be a useful non-pharmacologic method for managing pain for patients with lupus in addition to usual medical care. And on my last slide, this will be my last slide. It is very daunting slide. So I just wanted to show you here the orthomolecular effects of acupuncture using a distal point. So we can see here, there's the gut system, the spinal cord system, and the brain system, hypothalamic pain axis. So in essence, acupuncture will tilt your balance from a pro-inflammatory state towards an anti-inflammatory state, from a noxious stimulus state to a endorphin, increased endorphin and opioid states, helping with pain relief. So for those asking the molecular basis of acupuncture, this slide will explain all the possible, molecules involved in the action of acupuncture. And this can help also explain why sham acupuncture or minimal needling also produces the pain relieving effects. It's because it acts on a systemic level. Okay? So I hope you guys learned something today. If you have questions, feel free to ask. My references are the following. Yes, and thank you for your kind attention. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. Now, can we have you on stage for
Right.
our awarding
Sige po.
for the plaque? And thank you for marrying the Western and Eastern medicine for the treatment of SLE.